I will move that this House notes the landmark ruling by the UK Supreme Court on April 16, 2025, which unanimously determined that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to biological females, excluding transgender women, even with gender recognition certificates. 2, that this ruling arose from a challenge by Women for Scotland against the Scottish Government's 2018 Gender Representation on Public Boards Act, which had included transgender women in its definition of a woman, for gender balance quotas, prompting For Women Scotland to argue that sex-based protections should apply only to those born female. 3, that the UK Supreme Court, led by Deputy President Lord Hodge, ruled that interpreting sex as certificated rather than biological would create, quote, incoherent and heterogeneous groupings, undermining the Equality Act's protection for women, particularly in single-sex spaces like hospital wards, changing rooms and sports. 4, that the court further argued that a biological definition ensures clarity for lesbian-only spaces, and solidifying the meaning of sexual orientation as a protected characteristic helps ensure the autonomy and dignity for lesbians. 5, that the ruling reinforces the principle that sex is an immutable biological state, providing a, quote, common-sense framework for women's rights as articulated by For Women Scotland, co-founder Susan Smith, who celebrated the decision as a victory for biological reality and women's protection. 6, that this House recognises the positive impacts of this ruling for women, including A, strengthened protections for single-sex spaces, ensuring that facilities like refuges, prisons and sports clubs can exclude biological males, enhancing women's privacy, safety and dignity. B, clarity in legal definitions, preventing public boards or services from prioritising certificated gender over biological sex, which could otherwise exclude biological women from opportunities, as FWS argued might occur with quotas becoming, quote, 50% men and 50% men with certificates. C, preservation of women-specific rights, such as those tied to pregnancy and maternity, which the court noted would be complicated if sex included certificated gender, ensuring biological women's unique needs remain prioritised. 7, that this House acknowledges the ruling's affirmation that transgendered individuals retain protections against discrimination under the Equality Act's gender reassignment provisions, but that women's sex-based rights must be distinctly upheld based on biology, balancing the needs of both groups without compromising women's safety. 8, that this House calls on the New South Wales Government to A, review the New South Wales anti-discrimination and equality laws, including the Anti-Discrimination Act 1977, to ensure definitions of woman and sex align with biological reality, drawing inspiration from the UK Supreme Court's clarity. B, strengthen policies protecting women-only spaces in New South Wales, such as in sports, healthcare and domestic violence services, to reflect the biological basis upheld by the ruling, ensuring women's safety and fairness. C, engage with women's advocacy groups to assess the impact of current gender policies on biological women, ensuring their voices are prioritised in future legislative reforms. 9, that this House recommends that the New South Wales Minister for Women to introduce guidelines ensuring that public institutions and service providers prioritise biological sex in the provision of women-only services, reflecting the UK ruling's emphasis on privacy, safety and fairness for women. 10, that this House recognises that Australia's first female Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, amended the Sex Discrimination Act to include gender identity, and as such, Australian women do not have the same rights as women in the UK do today. And 11, that this House celebrates this ruling as a global precedent that reaffirms women's rights, providing a framework for New South Wales to enhance protections for biological females while fostering a balanced approach to equality that respects all individuals' dignity.